He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome to Coast View, the show that celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi a better place to live, work, and play. Hey, we've got a really important and special conversation that we're going to be having today with Brian and Marie Sanderson. We'll go ahead and bring them in, and let me say good morning to them. How you guys doing this morning?
Morning, Ricky. Good.
Well, thanks.
Thank you for joining us. We've had a lot of challenging times over the course of the last 2 or 3 months, haven't we? I mean, it's pretty interesting time with the pandemic and then, of course, the unrest in America today. We'll come to grips with it all. I think that everybody's very focused today on, how do we heal things in our heart and how do we heal things in our economy? And, certainly what we're going to be talking today, the Mississippi 30-Day Fund that you guys started with some really wonderful partners, is a step in that direction to help small business. And we're going to come back to that in just a second. Before we do that, I want to say, first of all, that we've had actually Coast View sessions, show long conversations with Marie and Brian, because they're both incredibly accomplished in their careers. They live in Ocean Springs, but they work all over the country, and especially in Washington, D.C. They're really a great example of the new economy, that you can live anywhere and work remotely or commute or whatever you want to do. They have 3 kids that they've raised in Ocean Springs, and they do a lot of commuting and a lot of flying, and these days, I guess, a lot of technology use. But so Marie, why don't you kind of bring people up to speed on what you're up to these days?
Sure. Well, Brian and I have 3 kids and a couple of consulting businesses, mostly in the public affairs and government affairs space. And so those businesses, at least the ones that I'm affiliated with, are all in Washington. So to your point, when we're not in COVID times, I spend a lot of time on airplanes, traveling to meet with clients, to work on strategy. Sometimes we travel outside to state capitals and to headquarters of our clients. So, in normal times, we're on the road a lot, as you noted.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about you, Brian.
Yeah, so similar type of work to Marie, state government affairs practice that I've begun a little over a year now. I was policy director at RGA and left that position again just over a year ago. And so travel a good bit, not quite as much as Marie does, but a good bit. Not since March, but before.
So Brian and I worked together on the Governor's Commission on Recovery, Rebuilding, and Renewal. I was a vice chairman of the effort. He was actually, I guess, legal counsel was the official name for your work. Helped form the organization, helped make sure that we stayed, everything we did was just exactly the way it should be in terms of the legal process, and was also just a great leader in that effort. They both, have had great amount of work in both the public and private sector. And so they bring to the conversation that we're about to have a lot of experience, a lot of relationships. And one of the things I mentioned to them offline is that in times like this, when we're sort of having this economic disaster brought to us by the pandemic, it's great that people leverage relationships and leverage experience and bring people together for the good of solving a problem. And that is how the Mississippi 30-Day Fund came about. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, why don't y'all kind of take us through the process of what was going on in your minds about the situation and what you might be able to do to help?
Sure. Well, my work in Washington and around the country actually helped with the idea. The concept of the 30-Day Fund was started by a colleague of ours in Virginia, Burson Snyder, Pete Snyder. Pete is a venture capitalist and has had a great career and felt compelled to do something. And so he seeded a fund and created what is known as the 30-Day Fund. My partners and I were helpful to him in that regard. We helped promote it and help fundraise fundraise. And then we started to see these funds pop up in other states, in Pennsylvania and Colorado and Arkansas and New Jersey. And we had this, Brian and I had this moment of, well, why not Mississippi? And the premise is simple. If you have the ability to give, pay it forward. And we're seeing that people who have extra resources are quite willing to help another person. And in Mississippi, the home of charitable giving, we're starting to see that Mississippians agree that they can help each other.
So, okay, so you had the idea that what you were seeing and the efforts in these other states could be something we launch here. And so you talked to Brian about it. You said, okay, let's go do this. We're going to leverage our relationships. We're going to reach out to a wide variety of leaders across the state, public and private sector, and we're going to form this organization. So take us through the process.
So the great thing about it was the Virginia folks had already established the 501c3 designation, had already had some of the organizational support there. So it was, to some extent, kind of a plug and play. We had to, register with the Secretary of State here, which I did pretty quickly. And so we had all that buttoned up. We have a great partner with People's Bank that agreed to open up the account for us and, waive fees and be a great partner in that effort. And then it became, we had a website already established. And then it was time, we needed people around us that believed in the cause and that would help promote it, help give, and help reach out to small businesses that they knew were in need. And at that same time, we anecdotally knew of small businesses in our communities and others across Mississippi that, of course, were struggling. And then you might recall, Ricky, back in April, there was a survey that said 2/3 of Mississippi small businesses said that they faced a real challenge of closing within the next 5 months. So that was sort of the clarion call to action.
So let's get specific so people can understand what it is. What is it that you're hoping to do, or actually the applications are pouring in and the money is coming in. So if I'm a small business, how is it going to impact me?
Sure. Well, let me first say this. The partners are pretty important. Mississippi State's Business School and Ole Miss's Law School are helping us. They're partners that process these applications. And what we didn't say, and we should have in the beginning, is that we made several phone calls across the state. I called my former boss, Governor Haley Barbour, and asked if he'd help. He said, sure. Phil Bryant was very active in wanting to get involved. We reached out to former Democrat governors. Governor Mabus has been really excited and emails about wanting to make sure that that we know he's there to help us. Governor Musgrove, and then there were all sorts of people across the state that I know we'll get into in a minute. But I wanted to say that in the beginning. But what's in it for a small business? We've found that about 20% of the applications that we are getting actually got PPP funding from the federal government. So that's, roughly 80% or so of the people who are applying for our grants actually never received any federal funding. So we want to commend our state. Mississippi has a state program that's launching today or tomorrow. Our elected officials have created a fund for Mississippians for small businesses, and you'll be seeing more about that in the coming days from the state. But we felt like, given the stats we were seeing, there was also room for a charitable response as well. So that is why all the partners, Ole Miss and state and the elected officials, agreed that there was a reason to do this, and we stepped up.
So you got so interesting. So you've got former governors, both Democrats and Republicans. You've got universities involved, and you've reached out to a number of other leaders so that you can create as much of a web of support throughout the state to leverage every possible relationship available, so you can find ways to raise as many funds as possible so that people and through a nonprofit can or small businesses can get the money they need to maybe stay afloat. How much money can they get?
They can a maximum of $3,000. We arrived at that number. That was what the National Fund uses as well. The idea is $3,000 could help a business stay open for another 30 days, until the economy gets back open until our state funds start flowing. So it's really a bridge to help small businesses stay afloat.
That's awesome. So it's been launched, and tell me more about. I should, in the spirit of full disclosure, you asked me to be on the advisory board, and I very much agreed to do this because, I can help, bring attention to it, talk to some folks that I know about the program, and you've got a hell of an advisory board that you put together. Tell me about that.
Well, with any effort, there are people who do yeoman's work to get you started. Alston Barber out of Jackson, Kirby Boatler, also of Jackson. His cousin is actually Burson Snyder, who was one of the founders. Karen Sock here on the Gulf Coast has done a lot to help us find applicants. We have worked with Amy Tate and Tupelo.
So let's we're going to pick up after Amy Tate when we come back from the break. This is Marie and Brian Sanderson, and we're talking about the Mississippi 30-Day Fund that they introduced to the state and the incredible energy behind it. So we'll see you after this break.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast View on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to supertalkmsgulfcoast.com.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We're having a terrific conversation with Marie and Brian Sanderson about the Mississippi 30-Day Fund that they introduced to the state as a result of relationships they have outside the state. And what we were talking about before we went to the break is this incredible web of relationships that they have connected with to create really a force to be reckoned with on this fund to raise as much money as possible so that as many small businesses as possible can be served by it. And you were beginning to talk about who all is involved and who's on the board, and you'd mentioned Karen, but keep giving us more detail about who's involved.
Sure. You want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. It's a great geographic diversity across the state. Business and community leaders from every corner on the coast. Again, yourself, Ricky, Karen Sock, Joe Cloyd, Jenny Nico. I know there are others that I'm leaving out from the coast, but really from every corner of the state have really stepped up and have agreed to serve. Mary Donald Haskell, former Miss Mississippi and actress, has really been involved in serving in a great capacity.
We have restaurants, John Current, Robert St. John out of Hattiesburg, Jeff Good out of Jackson. We've just had a lot of people who work with small businesses give us a lot of feedback. We've had what's just as important as the money we're raising is the conversations we're having with some of these people. I had someone who shall remain unnamed talk about the PPP program when I was giving them the statistic that 80% of our applicants that we've seen so far didn't receive it. And this particular person said, I did receive it. My accountant thought it was good for me to apply, but where I am, I actually don't need it. So I'm thinking about giving it to your fund so you can give it out to someone who needs it. And so those are the types of productive conversations that we're having with people. I'm having a great year, or my year is as well as I did last year. I'm going to pay it forward and give you a little bit of money to help someone else. And that's the really heartwarming conversations that we're having with people as we talk about the program.
I wish more people would do that. Because actually, I get it that when a lot of businesses applied for PPP program, and this is the payroll protection program for people who don't remember what PPP is, and essentially you could apply for the money and it helped you keep people on your payroll for a certain period of time. At the time that you applied, you really didn't know where your business experience was going to be. Some of them really needed it. Some of them really needed it again. But some businesses actually, as it turned out, performed pretty well within this COVID environment. And I wish that more would do that. I wish more would say, you know what, God dang, man. I mean, I really appreciate this. I can legally keep it, to run my business and because I did exactly what the program said to do. But my revenue experience from compared to what I anticipated is much better. And, maybe I should give it to this program so it could help somebody else who, as it turns out, actually needs it, who didn't get it. What a interesting angle to this. So anyway, what else are you hearing from small businesses?
Well, Brian spent a lot of time on the applications. I, again, want to thank Ole Miss and Mississippi State, because we have hundreds and hundreds of these applications, and they are going through them. And for people who are considering donating, they're doing great due diligence. We ask very specific questions to ensure that the business has been in Mississippi for a year, is a Mississippi resident, has an EIN. But these college students are getting on Google and looking at the business's Facebook page, or making sure on Google Maps, so they have an office front, that these are legit businesses. And so that's been special. We also are different in that we ask for the applicant to prepare a video. Brian, do you want to comment a little bit on some of the videos?
Yeah, it's really been heartwarming and touching for some of these, a lot of the videos. It comes through that their small businesses is really their dream, what they pour their passion and energy into, and it's their lifeblood. It means everything to them. And so many of these businesses have just been absolutely crushed because of the lack of customers, or they were forced to close down. They're trying to do the right things in terms of sanitation or social distancing and have everything back up to speed in this new environment. But it's tough, and it's just, the stories that we hear on the videos of not being able to make rent, and I'm having to dip into my own personal savings just to pay a utility bill, and to keep 2 employees on instead of having to furlough them. It's really, and it's all types of businesses, restaurants, hair salons, bakeries. All sorts of karate studio. It really runs the gamut of individuals and their life stories.
It's really, we're in such a interesting and challenging time. I had Kent Nico from Memorial Hospital at Gulfport on yesterday, and as you know, his family's in the restaurant business as well. And he talked about how concerned he was that people are not taking the current COVID situation seriously. And I think he had said that had like 8 cases the day before, which in the scheme of things, not a lot, but if you look at it from a percentage point of view, it is an uptick. And as you can hear from the governor and Dr. Dobbs, they're concerned about this, that people are, during Memorial Weekend, they really dropped their guard, and that maybe some of the infections that we're seeing today came from that. But, I'm sure that it's tough for him because he knows the reality, and he's trying to help people understand that if we're not careful, we're going to have an outbreak. And to talk like that really affects him personally through his restaurants. And I had this conversation with Robert St. John, so I know he was also involved in this effort, that that their efforts to abide by the order from the governor and to focus on keeping people safe really has upset their business model. And, I would say gyms, and you mentioned a karate, I get karate, anything like that where they're going to be in close proximity or even touching. If they're true to helping people stay safe, it's going to affect their business. There's no doubt about it. Now, other parts of the economy have just sped forward, and we're seeing some good numbers that have come from all that. But this is a really challenging time, and I would hope that other people would step up and say, what can I do to help supercharge this Mississippi 30-day fund? Because to my knowledge, I don't know of another statewide program like this that has been developed this so simple and simple application. I love the idea of the video. Where did that come from?
Well, that comes from the national board. So we give Pete Snyder and Burson Snyder and their team credit for that. But we wanted to be different. And when they were forming the Virginia Fund, wanted to hear from the applicants directly. Government and the banks can't do that, but we can. And it helps make decisions, because obviously the money that's being requested is greater than the money we currently have. But no dollar that we are raising goes to management or overhead. Everything we raise goes right back out to small business. So we tell people, when you give, it's going to go to a small business, and we have a wait list. We're making awards over the next several days. And then the people we haven't been able to make award to will get asked if they want to stay on our wait list. And we will continue to fund that wait list and stay in touch with all of these applicants as more money becomes available. And we're committed to that. We're absolutely committed to trying to provide support, but it helps us understand these needs when we hear those videos and have those testimonials.
I see that so clearly. What an interesting approach. What it does is it touches you with their story. I mean, it really humanizes their story. So if you were I'm going to take today off, then you remember what you saw in that video and you say, I can't, we're running short. We've got people to help. I mean, what a compelling case for action that has to create for you and the other people who are seeing those. Wow. Tell me more about Karen Sock's role.
Well, Karen, as you know, has been a business leader on the Gulf Coast for a long time. And Karen has done a great job of helping us reach the communities on the Gulf Coast, but across the state, who would benefit from these loans. She is a workhorse and sent, numbers of emails and phone calls, and has really helped us promote that we're here to serve. Brian, you've had Karen for years.
Oh yeah, she's phenomenal. What she's done with the Pathways partnerships to Pathways group, and didn't take long to convince her to be on the board. She was all for it and got it immediately.
And then Julia Grant.
Yeah.
Where do we start with Julia Grant? She's a young lady from Gulfport, Mississippi. She was a National Merit finalist when she went to Ole Miss. She's a superstar. She's going to the University of Virginia for law school. And we, among a lot of other people, are already pressuring her to come back to the state when she's done. But she's a star, and she's managing all of our college students and helping us look at applications. And she's a star, and we're really lucky to have her. And a lot of it's interesting, a lot of internships were canceled this year, and so Julia and we have received phone calls from volunteers who want to help. And candidly, we're very open to that because we've been a little overwhelmed with the workload, not only in fundraising, which we're spending a lot of our personal time doing, but also getting through the application process.
Well, we're running to the end of our time here, but by the way, on Julia Grant, she sounds like somebody I should get on the show. I really love the opportunity to talk to young people and get their perspective, and she sounds like a superstar. No. So please pass along my invitation to invite her to be on my show.
We will.
Marie and Brian Sanderson, thank you so much for your volunteer leadership in the community and across the state. And if you have any interest whatsoever, look up Mississippi 30-Day Fund and help us make this program the best it can possibly be. Have a great day.
Appreciate you,
Ricky.
Thanks. Bye.
Subscribe for free to the Coast View podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.